Thank you, Mr. Bhuminathan, for having me here this morning. And thank you, Vivek Harinarayan, for saying such nice things about me. In fact, I am the wrong person to be here. I am the wrong person to be here because I didn't stay the course in the IAS. And as has been just mentioned, I left after 24 years of service. But that should not be a disincentive for all aspiring IAS officers sitting in front of me here. IAS is a great service. And so is the Indian Police Service and the other services which are generally categorized as central services. And let me confess right in the beginning, this is the confession of a former IAS officer, that in politics generally, and especially when I had ministerial responsibilities, the experience that I had acquired as an IAS officer came in extremely handy in disposal of official work, in formulation of policy, in really finding out what people wanted, and in terms of disposal of files, which is a very important part of a minister's job, because so much file work is generated in the secretariat, and especially in the Ministry of Finance, which is one of the biggest ministries in the government of India. So I used to get 4 or 5 boxfuls of files every evening. And I'll finish my day's work, and have dinner, then I used to sit down to dispose of the files. And I'll carry on until late in the night, until I had signed the last or seen the last paper, which included preparation for the meeting the next day. And I was therefore surprised where a very senior colleague of mine in the cabinet one day told me that she felt a little handicapped because her PS wasn't there and files were accumulating. So I said, but why is the PS necessary for you to, private secretary, necessary for you to dispose of files? I do it myself. The only assistance that I have is that of a peon who stands or who is called in when one box is full and the other box has to be, files have to be put on my table. But she was shocked, as were many other people, that I did not keep files pending, that whatever came to me, like a tennis match, you return whatever shots you get. And I was very surprised, for instance, there was a very important taxation matter which had been under examination in the ministry for some time. And when the file finally came to me, I found that the secretary, a very efficient officer, had taken a couple of months at his level to me. I'm not beating my own drum when I say that I was able to go through the file, go through all the facts, the various aspects of the policy, and was able to dispose it of then and there with my contribution to the decision-making process. So the experience that I acquired in the bureaucracy came in very handy. The other thing, let me tell you, is the fact that when you are in politics and you are lucky to be elected, you become an elected representative, then for your constituency, you are the chief grievance officer. That is the status of an MP or an MLA, that he or she is the chief grievance officer. People come to them with grievances, with all levels of administration. If the administration is doing its job properly at the district level, the number of complaints will be less. If it is not so efficient, then the number of complaints will be more. And it's your duty as a representative of the people to listen to them. And then, wherever you find that there is an injustice involved or a right cause involved, then you take it up with the officials concerned. So, that is something which pursues you right through. And it's a very important part of representatives, elected representatives' responsibility. There again, my field experience as a sub-divisional magistrate, as a district magistrate, even my secretariat experience came in very handy because I knew the ropes. And therefore, even the official at the other end to whom I speak, he knew that I knew. And therefore, he would not try and take me for a ride. Be that as it may, I took the exam 60 years ago, in 1959. That was the year in which I took the exam. 60 years. A whole lot of things have changed in these 60 years. So, the IAS exam pattern has changed. The kind of questions which are asked have changed. The number of people who take the exams has changed. When I took the exam in 1959, we were told that some 10,000 people had taken the exam all over the country. 10,000. What is the number now? 1 lakh? 10 lakhs. 10 lakhs. Oh my God. So it's 10 lakhs. From 10,000 to 10 lakhs. I was a little intrigued by the name of this academy, KingMakers. It's misleading because none of you is going to be kings. Okay? And I have, in this biography that I have written recently, I have said that when I got through the exam, you were right, in my first attempt, we went through 3 stages. The first was I was immediately a celebrity because I had cracked the IAS exam. And in those days, in a place like Patna, Madras then, Chennai now, is different. But in Bihar, in Patna, we used to have every year 2-3 people who would get into the service. So you immediately became a celebrity. I was already a teacher in my university. But the moment the results came, I suddenly found that the person sitting next to me was looking at me with much greater admiration than he did until the results had come out. And I'll share with you what another IAS officer told me, a couple of years my senior. He was also teaching somewhere, and he said the day the results were announced, his colleague who used to sit with him and spend a lot of time with him, he looked at him with a great deal of admiration and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were so brilliant." The brilliance or being good in your subjects, studies is a factor. But in the IAS exam, luck is a very, very big factor. And therefore, you have to work very, very hard in order to be able to get through the written exam in the first instance. And you have to be very careful about the subjects that you choose. We are often, as a result of our background, at a loss to choose subjects. In my time, we had to choose 5 subjects. Was it the same in your time, Adi? 2. In my time, we had to take 3 subjects which are called lower subjects, and 2 were called higher subjects, which meant you were expected to put in a much better performance there with specialized knowledge kind of. So I was not at a loss, as many other people were, because I had studied history and then shifted to political science only with the intent of taking the IAS exam. So I shifted to political science for my master's, and then I had a whole lot of subjects from which I could choose those 5 subjects, and I chose them carefully, studied them carefully, and the fact that I was already a teacher helped. So my first advice to all those who are aspiring for succeeding in the competitive examinations is you have to, one, select your subjects very carefully, two, study very hard, three, you have to be original in your replies. Don't go by what the texts say necessarily. You must show that you have an independent mind. It's very important. What is the total number of marks now? 275 out of a total of 2025. So 225. It used to be much worse in my days because I think the total number of marks say for the written examination was what, 300 plus 600, 900, and 400. So that will be 1350 or something. And then you had 400 marks for the personality test. Just imagine, 400 marks, which used to um, influence the ultimate results very significantly. There was a student of Patna University who got into the foreign service 2 years before we did it, and he had 360 marks out of 400. Just imagine. I mean, he became really a role model. How much did I get? Out of 400, I got only 140, 140, 35%. And why did I do it? I mean, why did I do so poorly? I did so poorly because I was overconfident. I had no reason to be overconfident. I was not dressed properly. I went from a small Mufassil town, which was what Patna was then. I didn't know what kind of suits to wear, what kind of tie to wear, what kind of shirt to wear. So I walked into the room with all those distinguished people sitting there. But I was extremely confident of myself. That's a ailment from which I suffer even today. So I made mistakes. But more than the mistakes, it was the overconfidence which must have been noticed by those who were interviewing me. Because we used to have, in those days, an officer from the police service also, because Indian police service was what many people preferred immediately after the IFS. So he asked me, he looked at my CV and then he said, Sinha, I find that you've been a very successful cadet of the National Cadet Corps. You have even passed your Certificate C exam. You participated in the Republic Day parade in Delhi. So why is it that you have given such a low preference to the police service? Now, it is not meant for all of you who are aspiring to be in the police service, but for some reason, I had given a lower preference to the police service compared to some of the central services. So it was a fair question to ask. I was a sports person. I was a very successful cadet in the NCC. So naturally, it will be natural for anyone to look at my record and ask me this question. So he asked me this question. And I looked him straight into the eye and I said, why should my being in the NCC, sir, condemn me to the police service? Now, this was the silliest of replies which could have been given. Actually, I ended up getting only 140 in the interview, but I had done extremely well in the written exam. So I was quite high up in the list in the first 15. So, what is my advice? I'm sure Vivek tells you what is needed, but you have to be humble. You cannot afford to be arrogant. In your personality test, you have to show that you are intellectually very well equipped, but still you are humble. You are very good everywhere, still you are humble. Humility pays more in life than arrogance. And that is something that you will have to remember not only for the personality test, but also in your later career. Then I had a very successful career in the IAS. I'm very glad that Mr. S.P. Ambrose is sitting here. Mr. Ambrose was my boss, in the Ministry of what was then called Shipping and Transport. Now the two ministries are probably separated. And Mr. Ambrose was the additional secretary. I was joint secretary. I used to work closely with him on various issues. And that was the stage at which I decided to finally call it a day in the civil service and get into the uncertain waters of public life. I was, I would say, lucky because to begin with, there was nothing going for me. In order to succeed in public life of this country, wherever you are, in whichever state, you need various kinds of power. You need the power of your community, of your caste, you need money power, and in many parts of the country, you need muscle power also. And I had none of this going for me. But what major experiment I was carrying out with my own life, and also with the way the polity of India is organized, is to find whether there was any place for merit in politics. And whatever little success I achieved in politics largely proves the point that if you are a little better than the others, you can succeed. And I was a little better than the others, so my bosses thought it fit to give me the kind of responsibilities which I had, both within the organization of the parties I had belonged to and in government. In my first stint as finance minister in 1991, which was, I was there only for 6 months, I had the honor of dealing with officials who were all senior to me in service. And this was something which everyone was very curious to know about. How did they treat me? How did I treat them? I treated them with the respect they deserved, and they treated me with the respect I deserved. And I'll say to the eternal credit of those colleagues, some of them are here in this city, that they behaved with impeccable. So that was not an issue. In 98, when I became finance minister again, By then, I had become senior enough in the service. Everybody else was junior to me, even from that standpoint. And then, of course, I had no issues dealing with them. But I used to tell my officials that, these are the red lines. We will not cross them. You will not cross them. I will also not cross them. And therefore, whenever I found that the officials were crossing those red lines and I was not, then I would chastise them. I call them and give them a piece of my mind that if it is not open to me to cross those red lines, it is not open to you either. And transfers and postings in the Ministry of Finance, you control Indian Revenue Service, which is both income tax as well as customs and excise. Then you have the Indian Economic Service. It's the controlling authority. It's the Ministry of Finance. So I did my best to give them a better deal. All these three services, I try to give them a better deal because I believe in the fact that you have to keep your employees happy and satisfied in order to be able to get the best out of them. Even today, I am relentlessly active. Today, I don't have any bosses because I left the party to which I belonged. I did not join any political party. I thought at this age now, I should offer my services to the country in my best light. So I will judge what is best in national interest, speak my mind without fear, even of the consequences. But I didn't have that fear even in the service. Even in the service, there was a chief minister of my state. And again, I was very arrogant. I was in charge of a district and he came visiting the district and we had, for some silly reason, a big argument, which ended by me telling him that, Mr. Chief Minister, I can become Chief Minister one day, but you can't become an IAS officer. So that was unnecessary again, as I said. But the point I'm making is for would-be aspiring civil servants in whichever cadre and to whichever service you might be, your job is cut out. And I have told generations of civil servants with whom I have had opportunity to interact. I said, your loyal Constitution of India. Who is your boss? The Constitution of India. So you, when you are lucky enough and you get into any of the services and you are required to perform your duties, then for God's sake, do it as per the conduct rules, do it as per the laws of the land, and do it as per the Constitution of India. Even if it is not acceptable to your bosses, whether they are in the civil service or they are in the political echelons. You give your advice and do your job according to your best judgment, and don't allow other people's judgment to influence yours. We live in an age, and it's not something new. It's happened over a period of time that we have civil servants in particular look up to their bosses, both within the civil service as well as political bosses. Try to anticipate what they would like to hear and then tailor your advice to suit them. Don't ever commit that mistake. You might get a good posting, you might prosper in your career, but you will be doing enormous disservice to this country. So this is my last piece of advice to you. When you do succeed, and I wish you all very well, and I hope that all of you will succeed and you will assume responsibilities in your future careers, please remember this, that you don't have to kowtow before anyone, don't have to please anyone. Your responsibility is to ensure that the laws, the rules, regulations are obeyed, and that ultimately you are true to the Constitution.